push comes to shove, I want to get the calories in. I'll be like, let's do a fucking Go-Gurt on the way. Like, let's just throw in some gummy worms. Like,
the moms are dying right now.
And all the kids are like, yeah,
Dad is the best.
Okay, so let's record the intro now.
So what did Milkless? Because I think we start with the name.
Two dads, we love our kids, but then we also need them to know that we're like pretty cool and it's not like a wimpy podcast. So, hey, hey, Milkless.
Hey, welcome. Hey,
Milkless. Call the audience, Milkless. What's up, Milkless? Matt and Max coming at you.
What if that's it? That's our first take. On this episode of the podcast, we are excited to welcome Dr. Morgan Cutlip. She is a PhD in psychology with more than a decade of experience as a speaker and educator on the fine art of relationships. She's also, a mother of two, so she knows of what she speaks. Her first book, Love Your Kids Without Losing Yourself, is available on Amazon, Audible, all the places. And her upcoming book is called A Better Share, How Couples Can Tackle the Mental Load for More Fun, Less Resentment, and Great Sex. Who's not for that? She was kind enough to come and spend some time with us talking about ways to share the load in a marriage. Here we go.
All right, Matt, super excited about today's episode. We have Dr. Morgan Cutlip on with us today. So pumped about this. Matt, I'm going to throw it over to you. Why don't tell us how we want to get into this today?
Well, thanks for being here. You're deeply overqualified to be talking to a couple of chuckleheads. So I appreciate your patience in advance.
I love your podcast.
Thank you. That's very nice of you. So you have written a book, and I have a book coming out, I know, in April. So I kind of want to talk about the ideas contained therein. The book coming out is about basically mental load and sharing the mental load within a marriage. And there's a lot of pieces of that there's the logistical piece of that. There's the scheduling. There's the what's in the pantry. Max, you always say, when was the last time the kids bathed? Who can say? Your wife holds that one. But one of the things that you talk about in your previous book is that there's this other piece of mental load that is about like carrying the emotional well-being of the people around you, your spouse and your kids. Mm-hmm. I wonder if you could just articulate what you mean by that a little better than I currently am. And then we could kind of talk about that idea, because I think it's really, really interesting.
Okay, do you care if I just take you on a journey and I'll just define, I'm going to go in the weeds and define the mental load just so that we're going to start the episode on the same page with what it is.
Let's go.
Okay, let's do it. So in a broad sense, the mental load is like the invisible running to-do list that people carry around in their minds that occupies a ton of cognitive real estate. When I say cognitive real estate, I mean it just takes up space in our brains. Mm-hmm. And the important piece around that is that when it takes up cognitive real estate, it crowds out other stuff. So if you notice when you're more overwhelmed that you're forgetful, or you notice when you're more overwhelmed, you lose your temper more, you just have less patience, it's because that stuff taking up space in your brain is pushing out your ability to regulate and recall and all this other stuff. It also relates to your ability for women, for the most part, to get in the mood for sex. So we can talk about that if you want, but
that requires no mental real estate for us. We're just there we are.
It takes up a sliver.
Yeah, just the tiniest sliver. Sorry, ladies.
It's so cruel how we're set up.
It is, yeah.
Well, no, but one time we moved into a new house and I didn't know where the toilet paper was being stored, the backup toilet paper.
Yeah.
And I was just too embarrassed to ask, but I needed to know where it was.
Yeah.
And we'd lived there for 6 months. And I was like, hey, babe, where's the backup toilet paper? And there was definitely no relations happening that night.
And your wife said, "This is why I don't have sex with you."
That's a different reason. That was a different reason. Well, I think a good rule of thumb is for women, for most part, I mean, I'm generalizing, but for women to get in the mood, to be turned on, their brains need to be turned off. So that's the gist there. Mm-hmm. So this issue of the mental load becomes pretty important for relationships because it kind of affects all domains. So, okay, let's talk about the pieces involved or the domains of the mental load. And for the record, everybody has one. Everybody has a mental load. It's talked about in terms of women carrying it, and we do for the most part in the home and family. But we have them at work. We have them. Our kids have mental loads. Everybody's got one. So, So I say that there's 3 domains involved in the mental load. And so if you just like visualize circles, like a Venn diagram, now I'm like questioning if a Venn diagram only has 2. Well, so there's 3 circles.
it can
okay.
have-
It can have more, yeah?
yeah, it
Okay, thank you. I'm like, whoa, okay.
You're getting confused with the MasterCard logo.
No, which is what the cover of my book looks like. So,
Yes.
okay. So the first one is like the physical tasks, the physical domain of the mental load. This is like doing the dishes, doing the laundry, mowing the lawn, stuff like this, which is like, it takes up energy, but doesn't occupy a ton of space. We can kind of do that stuff with some automaticity. And so then the other circle is the cognitive or the mental domain of tasks. And that's like, for example, thinking about what I'm going to make for dinner, let's say, and making a list of ingredients. So at work, we kind of tend to live in the physical and the mental domains. It's like making the list, carrying out the tasks. So then the third domain is the emotional. So the emotional domain is the one that I believe is like really the kicker when it comes to the mental load. And it's really about these ongoing calculations that we make in our minds to account for the experiences of members of our family. So for example, our son, I have 2 kids, Effie, who's 11, and then Roy, who's 8, and he plays baseball, and he like does not eat breakfast, and it drives me crazy because then he gets hangry and dysregulated, and he pitches, and then doesn't have enough energy. So it's like on a morning of a tournament, say, when they have multiple games, I'm like stressing out the night before about like the buffet for breakfast that I'm going to offer him. And I'm thinking about, okay, well, if he doesn't eat his breakfast, he's going to show up at the game and he's going to play like crap because he's going to be tired by the time warm-ups, you're there an hour early. By the time he plays, he's going to be exhausted. He's going to pitch like crap. His coach is going to be mad at him. He's going to sit the next game. It's going to affect his self-confidence. And then he's going to play worse the next game because his self-confidence is like this whole like crazy.
But you're not spiraling at all. You're not playing it. Yeah.
Right. And that's just like, and I'm not even like, I'm like pretty contained about a lot of this stuff, but it's just like, that's one part of life. But like these ongoing calculations that we're always running to think about like what everybody needs and how do we meet these needs and what are the consequences if we don't, and intuiting them and then anticipating them and then carrying them out. That's the piece that I believe is the most draining. And here are a few things that are real important to understand. Number 1, you can't really hire that part out. Like, how do you bring someone in the house to be like, take care of this? You can't easily delegate it to a partner because if they're not like in that world, if they don't kind of think that way or they haven't practiced thinking that way, they're not going to come up with the same sorts of things. And the third is that it follows you everywhere. So even if you're a parent or a mom who works full time, you can literally be sitting, sometime at work and be whiplashed by the emotional labor of the home back into those moments, thinking about, the things that you need to take care of to make sure everybody's okay in your family. And to really take care of the emotional labor of the home, it requires a deep knowing of members of your family. All right, that's the journey.
That's a great journey. I think that's great.
That's amazing.
The other thing that I think is rough about all that is the difficulty of those 3 different categories is kind of inversely related to how easy they are to see.
Yeah.
It's really easy to see when your partner washes the dishes.
Yeah.
Which is pretty comparatively easy.
Yes.
It's somewhat easy to remember that like, okay, like the pantry is full and we know what we're going to eat for dinner because like my wife has done that thinking.
Yeah.
Which is harder than the physical stuff, but easier than the emotional stuff. The emotional stuff is the stuff that is probably the most invisible and also the most taxing.
Exactly. And something I left out is that at the intersection of these 3 circles, this Venn diagram, I call the triple threat. And almost everything involved in managing a home and family life involves each domain of the mental load. And so when you talk about the pantry, I don't have it in my book anymore, but I had this chapter called Epiphanies from a Pantry because one day I walked in my pantry and I was like, oh, because I'm like, I've literally thought through, shopped for, organized multiple times every item in my pantry. And so everything in a home sort of unpacks to tell a story of the physical, cognitive, and emotional labor, that goes into it. And so I think that's, you're talking about like the tasks are easy to see when they're done. But if you start looking around your home, you just want to feel good about all the labor you've put into it. It's like, pick one thing up and think about all of the pieces of the mental load that went into that thing sort of like manifesting itself in your home. And it's crazy.
Also, like something that you made me think about with the emotional aspect is like if you don't have like A+ communication with your partner and you guys aren't on the same page, like, and this is why I think it's so great that you're putting words to this. Because, for example, let's say the kids aren't eating breakfast before going to a tournament and we know that they're going to be all dysregulated. Well, if you don't have the same plan with your partner, then you can get into like a bit of a fight. For example, I am cool with going with like push comes to shove. I want to get the calories in. I'll be like, let's do a fucking Go-Gurt on the way. Like, let's just throw in some gummy worms. Like,
all the moms are dying right now.
Let's start with the.
And all the kids are like,
no,
but here's the thing. I will start with the eggs. I'll cook the eggs. We actually like doing, because we used to live in Europe, the British baked beans.
Yeah.
So we'll do eggs and beans and, cooked tomatoes. And that works 8 out of 10 times, 9 out of 10 times. Because I'm thinking through the same thing. Like, we got to get this food in there or else you're going to bonk when you're playing.
Yeah.
But then if it doesn't work, I think sometimes if we don't have a plan together that like, let's just go for a plan B 1 out of 10 times and just throw some calories in and let's give ourselves grace. And I know on your book or one of your sayings is like, stop shitting on yourself. Mm-hmm. Like that. I love that. Cause it's like, if you don't have the game plan that every once in a while we're going to acquiesce, then you can feel like a shitty parent. If it's like either they go without food or sometimes, a gummy worm, it's a calorie. It's not good. It's not good, but
it's not every day.
Can't
and then
be
when he crashes on the mound from his sugar high.
Can't be a gummy worm. Can't be a gummy worm.
You're going to be in trouble.
But like a Go-Gurt, the breakfast equivalent. A Go-Gurt or like
I like it.
Something that's like
I'm there. I'm like, whatever. I'm making like spaghetti for breakfast. Like, he likes dinner. So
our 4-year-old daughter likes canned corn.
Oh yeah.
And sometimes she won't eat anything for breakfast and she's like, can I just have some corn?
Whatever.
And we're like, for a while we were like, that's weird. Like you shouldn't be eating corn for breakfast. But it's like, hey.
Yeah, it's food.
So sorry, Go ahead, Morgan. What were you going to say?
No, I just think you kind of make my head spin because you're bringing up like really good points about a couple of things. I mean, my second book is actually called A Better Share, How Couples Can Tackle the Mental Load for More Fun, Less Resentment, and Great Sex. And the whole idea is to really help couples have the conversation around the mental load without it turning into a massive argument. And I think that like the ability to talk about it just in like the rhythm of your day becomes so important because things are always shifting and changing. And so if every time you bring it up, it's like, I never do enough for you, or like your expectations are so high, or it like turns into this big ordeal, then it's not going to get talked about. And then the partner who's carrying the majority of it is going to stuff it down and just build resentment. Mm-hmm. And it will start to eat away at the connection in your relationship. So fully agree. You got to be able to talk about it. You got to be able to talk about it in the moment. I think couples should also have like a regular time they sit down and go over stuff. But then the other piece you're bringing up is what I talk about in my first book, which I would probably call it the intensive parenting piece, which is like how we are just really parenting in a way that we have these wild standards for how we show up. And we basically pour an inordinate amount of time, energy, money, and effort into the raising of our kids, that our world sort of revolves around them and they're at the center, that it needs to feel hard, because if it doesn't feel hard, you're not doing a good enough job. Yeah. And all these other factors that are part of intensive parenting, which I think adds to the mental load in the home and family life. I think it's a point of contention a lot of times between men and women when it comes to the mental load, because women are usually the ones researching and listening to the experts online and reading the books, and they're like, you have to do it like this, and it starts to create a situation where they're carrying more. They feel like they're now managing not only the kids, but they're managing their partner to follow the rules that they're setting. And I'm not blaming them. I'm just saying that this is what's going on for a lot of couples. And I understand it. But I think that it makes it hard to like give your kid corn for breakfast.
Yeah.
When you feel like when you do that, you're going to like, I don't know what it is, screw up their blood sugar or, and then they're going to have these issues because you saw somebody talk about that online and you've decided you're going to, always have a good balance of macros for your kids. I don't know.
Yeah.
It becomes hard.
And I feel simultaneously two ways about it. Cause on the one hand, every once in a while I'll be talking to a mom who has 2 kids and then her husband comes up and she's like, oh, my 3rd kid.
Yes.
And I want to like code red that guy. I don't know if you remember the movie. What's the one with Jack Nicholson? You Need Us on That Wall. Anyways, code redding a guy. It's like if there's a weak Marine, you like
Go beat
him
ass.
with bars of soap.
Yeah.
In socks.
But on the other hand, I do think you're right that we have kind of created this pressure cooker of unrealistic expectations. So there is something worthwhile if you can have that tension come out constructively between, oh, we got to do all this and all this and all this. And the person is like, look, can we like chill out a little bit? Like that's actually a useful argument.
Yes.
If you can have it well. I've thought a lot since listening to your first book that I thought you articulated it well. We kind of know now that with babies, what you need to do is meet their needs. Mm-hmm. You got to meet a baby's needs. That's what's going to make a baby feel safe and learn that life is about attachment and not just survival. All the like totally. But we've like extrapolated that out. We don't scale that back in the way we need to over the course of a kid's life. That like, you're still going to be meeting all their needs when they're 18.
Right.
All right. Well, then what does that off ramp look like? That's hard for people, I think. And it gets us stuck in that like hyperdrive of if they eat corn for breakfast, they're going to go to prison or like whatever it is,
Yeah. But also like, just to go back to something you said, both of you said earlier, which, to defend the code red guy, look, sometimes they're total louts and they should be fucking punched in the face and code redded. But also I believe our society is like, we've talked about it, Matt, before. This is a new space for dads. So we're kind of coming in. We're like the fat guy at the gym. Like, okay, yeah, I want to get involved. It's like, how do I feel like
Can I
everyone's
use that? That's amazing.
Yeah, that's us.
I feel like everyone's looking at me. No one's looking at you. We want you to work out. We're excited that you're here, Dad.
Yeah.
But I'm in this new space traditionally held by women. Okay, what do I do? Do I just like, I'll try to get involved. And it is part of popular American culture to like, make fun of the dad, like, oh, you're such, and I'm sure I'm like at least close to a 50% parent. Maybe I'm 45%. My wife's 55, or maybe we're 50-50. I've definitely been the butt of that joke. Like, oh, he's my son. I mean, my 3rd son or whatever. You know what I mean? It's like, same thing, Matt, we've always said, sometimes we lean into it and we're like, oh, play date. My wife handles the calendar. I don't do that.
What day is this?
It's like,
It's
like, I think we lean into it a little bit. We're trying to get in there. It's kind of a new space.
Yeah.
Maxie, this episode is brought to you by, there's this podcast out there. It's been growing, steadily growing. It's called Milkless. It's these 2 fucking chuckleheads. I'm not sure why anybody listens, but they do. And it's very exciting for us.
That's what you got? That's your ad?
Well, I thought you were going to say something. Like, that was the toss.
Matt, you're good at a lot of things. Our goal here is to let people know we're thankful for you guys listening. Please share this with a friend. It's how we're going to be able to grow. So send it to a friend, and we'd be thankful.
All right.
No, it's good. That's good. That's good.
I was trying to like toss it off to you I thought that was a fucking layup.
I think like what you're doing is so cool, Morgan, is like with talking about the mental load and kind of championing this for traditionally moms who manage that in the household, brings light to something that I'm going to admit something like I didn't really even notice or value.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I thought like what's important is the child's development, their emotional well-being. I want to make sure that the kids are having fun all the time and you're getting love and affection. And I'm like always there with the kid. It's like, oh, we don't have, like, I just realized this. I have never once replaced the soap.
Yeah.
Like the squirt soap.
Yeah.
In the house. I don't even know where that is.
You just thought it never got empty.
Yeah. I just,
No, that's the soap fairy. They live in the same cloud as the laundry fairy and the pantry fairy.
But the fact
They're
that
magical creatures.
I will just hit something empty if I know that it's, and let's say my wife never goes in that bathroom and it's an empty soap, I'll just keep hitting that empty thing.
Just put a little water in it.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know if that's just my own deficiencies or if like a mom maybe has more social pressure to be like, well, you're not keeping your home properly.
Yeah.
You don't have that soap going. Dads don't really have that. Yeah. So it needs to be met with more active participation as opposed to shameful compliance.
You just bringing up a lot of stuff. Yeah, I 100% agree. I think part of it is I think we are we don't like to talk about gender differences. It's kind of like out of fashion, but it's still important because we're socialized differently. Even still, where I think men oftentimes it's like I provide and I protect. If I'm doing good there, I'm like checking those boxes. Everything else is gravy. And with women, we're really socialized to take care of our family and to nurture, and we are judged on the appearance of our home. Somebody walks in the home and be like, what, who's the guy that takes care of this place? You know what I mean? Like that's not really the norm even still. And so I do think that plays a part in how we sort of naturally just fall into the rhythms of our family and home life and who takes care of what and who notices what. So I think I just kind of am like, can we just like not get that mad about it? And can we start talking about how do we move through this in a way that it feels better to both people in the home and family? I don't love it when wives call their husbands a third kid. I think that can be kind of detrimental to the relationship. I understand it's funny. Like I can take a joke, but at the same time, it affects your sort of perspective on your partner, how you view them. And if you start viewing them as one more person I got to take care of, they're helpless, like they're kind of pathetic. It starts to, I mean, on the most basic level, you're not going to find your man-child sexy. You know what I mean? Like it's just not attractive. So it's going to start to affect that. And it's also going to just start to like make you really bitter. It's going to create this contentious sort of experience in the relationship. So the way that I approach it in my book and how I try to approach it in my work, I mean, social media is just these bits of content, is that you are a team. You are together. And you're maybe in different places. Like you said, it's the fat guy coming in the gym. Like you might be in different places, but the enemy is not one another. The enemy is the mental load. It's the pace of life. It's the pressure to always be productive. It is the like norms in our society that kind of push people into these roles that end up not really working for the modern family. That's the enemy. So how do we come together and talk about this stuff, offer a lot of patience and grace as we're both figuring this out. But when especially husbands and guys can come into the conversation with some level of openness instead of, judgment or trying to like argue away that this exists. I think that people can move through this really well together and find sort of a distribution that really works for families.
Yeah, there's something so valuable about, all right, this is gonna be a weird analogy, but there's been this influx of European basketball players in the NBA, and they're typically better at team defense. They're often better passers. They are often like not as athletic as the American players, but like they're a great team player. And what they are starting to trace this to is that at like the high school level, AAU players in the States, they don't practice much. They mostly play games. And in Europe, it is much more weighted towards practice than toward actual gameplay. So it's kind of insane. If you're thinking of your partnership as a team, it's kind of crazy to think we'll get this all worked out just by playing the game. You need that time to step away from actually being like the clock is ticking, the kids are losing their shit, we're in the game.
Yes.
You need to like make your plan outside of the pressure of that and do whatever the equivalent is, like practice. So you know how to play a team sport.
Yeah.
I love that so much. It's a perfect analogy. Yeah. And one of the main takeaways, so in my book, I give 4 things couples have to get good at sharing. But then one of the main sort of action points is that you have to have a regular sort of like meeting. And I don't care. Like I kind of provide an argument for like, I don't care if you think this is lame. It's going to transform your relationship. So do it. We have meetings about everything in life. Why not do it about your most important relationship ever? And you come together and you just kind of touch base on some of this stuff. And that's your practice. That's your plan. Make your plan, because when you're in the moment and your kids are freaking out and and like your partner's like, oh, not a back the diaper bag, you're going to lose your mind. And so have a plan, talk it over, and get really good at practicing and making adjustments.
All right, that's it for Part 1, guy. Come back next week for more of Dr. Maureen Cutlip.
Brought to you by Violet Archer.